I don't want to know me.
Too late, you're already live. Mona, you're live.
I'm live?
Yeah, you're on. And Mona!
People in yet?
Yeah,
Really?
it's all around the world. Everyone's watching you. All right. Welcome, everybody. It's been a minute, as they say in the vernacular of the streets. Hope everyone had a good Pesach, a happy, a healthy, and a liberating Pesach. And now we're back rock and rolling in the new sequence of Nun Aleph Nun Beis. So it's been a while, so we have missed a couple classes. So we restarted the sequence of Nun Aleph, the Nun Aleph Nun Beis sequence, 1991 and 1992, collectively known as the original Devar Malchus. Not the stuff that's floating around these days. It's a different discussion. But and it started with Parshas Vayikra. So we have Vayikra, of course, then we have Tzav, then we have Shmini, and now we are on Tazria v'Metzora, which is a double parsha. And this is a very, very action-packed Sicha. Very profound. In fact, the Sicha was given, just to give you a history, a little background. So the Rebbe gave the Sicha in Koach Nisan, which is the 28th of Nisan, which is tomorrow night. And on the 20th of Nisan, the Rebbe had a very profound Sicha, a very profound announcement, where he said, I've done everything I can to bring Mashiach. And now I'm giving the matter over to you. You must do everything in your power to bring Mashiach right now. With the lights of the world of Tohu, which is a very high, powerful, concentrated energy from above, into the vessels of this physical world down here below. Everyone was blown away because up until that point in time, everyone was confident that the Rebbe was taking us out of the gullus, that he in fact was redeeming us at that moment in time. And all of a sudden, what's going on? The Rebbe is saying, I'm giving the job over to you. So there was mass panic. This was, remember, in 1991. So there was faxes going back and forth between Far Chabad's and Crown Heights, and there's a lot of noise, a lot of commotion amongst Chassidim. What's going to be? What's going on? No one knew what to do. And then the Sicha came along, literally a week later, Tazria Metzora. And the Rebbe said very clearly in the Sicha what you need to do. Here's the path, the Rebbe said, the straight and clear path to bring redemption. And in fact, he goes on and tells us that Mashiach is already here. And there's only a tiny little bit of what is known as impurity on the surface, that 99.9% of all the energy has been rectified in the world. But there's a slight bit of energy that it's on the surface, very, very chitzoni, very surface amount, that is missing one final cleaning out for redemption to be here. And that's what we're going to tackle in this week's Sicha with God's help, starting right now. So let's go inside. Aleph. The hemshek l'medubar umudgash v'yozer b'zman achrayim mamish al derech hatzorich b'folaso yishal kol echad v'echad me'Yisrael. That says kol tilui bo lahavi es Mashiach tzikenu before mamish techav miad mamish. Wow, that was a bang. And the Rebbe is referring to the Sicha we just said, the 20th of Nisan, Koach Nisan, which he literally gave a week before the Sicha. And he says, in the continuation of what has been explained even more in the most recent times, how it's necessary in actuality that every single one of us, all of the Jewish people, must do all that is dependent upon us to bring Mashiach, our righteous Redeemer, before Mamish, in actual reality, like Mamish, Techviyad Mamish, immediately. The Rebbe brought, again, a sense of urgency to this message. For hundreds, for thousands of years, the message we've been seeing, well, for thousands of years was we're waiting for Mashiach, and for hundreds of years it will be Bim Haravi Amenu, speedily in our days. And then the Rebbe moved that up drastically, up into the point where it's now. It's very, very present in this exact moment in time. כיוון שבימינו אלה ממש, אם סיומה של חודש ניסן תהיה שערינו נפלאות. In this year of that I will show you wonders. The Nun Aleph is referring to a Russian Tevis of Niflaot Arenu, wonders that I will show you, referring to the miracles that God is going to show us. Kulo ka hakitzim. And we've reached the ends of all ends. Pshuto mamish, in the most simplest sense, the Rebbe says. Don't come and make Bubba Mitzvahs out of the Rebbe's words. He says exactly what he says, and that we are at the very end of times. And for sure, Mashiach is coming right now, immediately. And every single one of us will literally point their finger and say, here he is. Here's Melech HaMashiach. He's here. Shechavar bo. And the Rebbe said, and he's already here. He already came in the past tense. He's already revealed himself. In other words, we already know Mashiach's identity, the Rebbe said. It's not going to be, here's Mashiach. We already said here's Mashiach. We already said, yes, here's Mashiach. The regular in this exact moment in time. And there's to explain and emphasize the matter of the redemption in actuality. That every one of the Jewish people, to bring the redemption in all matters immediately, right now, this Shabbos. In other words, there's no waste of time. There was an opinion, according to Halacha, some used to say Mashiach can't come on Shabbos because the Indian of going from different Rishus is the Rebbe says no, Mashiach can come right now, this Shabbos. The Chol HaRosh, first of all, בענייני התורה השייכים מיוחד ליום השבש קודש זה בפרשת השבוע. First, we see something that is connected specifically to this week's parsha of the week. וכן בפרקי אבוס ליום השבש קודש זה, and also connected to the Pirkei Avos that we started reading, that we learned in the summer months. Including all the time, also the time we're in. Generally, the month that we're in the connection to the time of the month, and specifically to the Sphira that we're counting right now. We're counting in the middle of the Sphira to Omer. The Parshas Shavua, Tazria Metzora. We're in a double Parsha, Tazria Metzora. And it's emphasized very much in this week's Parsha, the concept of redemption. Okay. Tazria. Isha ki ta'azria, reledach zachar. And if a woman gives forth seed and gives birth to a male child, it's known that when a woman gives her birth, this is a hint on redemption, the idea of giving birth. Mashiach is likened to a new birth, a new energy that is going to come into the world. And the fact that it is a male child that it's referring to when a woman gives birth to a man, this is strengthening and empowering this whole concept of redemption, signifying of a male. Why a male? Because this is the final redemption. There's not going to be an exile afterwards. And therefore, Shir Chadash, the new song that we will sing, is from Lashon Zachar. It's a male song. Reason being is that a female is connected to the womb or to this concept of bringing new life into the world. So a woman, when another woman is born, it's showing that there's going to be another birth, because the woman will continue, God willing, to to give off more births. But a male is showing that's it. It's the final stages. And this is likened, of course, to Mashiach. Yalada Zachar, it says when a male birth. Remez all Yidei Neshamas Mashiach. And also referring to Mashiach, as we know that Mashiach is going to be a man. And it's referring on the soul of Mashiach. The idea of opening up this week's Parsha, Tazria, referring to when a woman gives birth to a male. But Pratyas Yoiser, more specifically, Eshe Ki Tazria, Kaya Klalos Avoda de Knesset Yisrael Bezman HaGolas, Shimshala Zezaria. The idea of a woman giving birth. This is referring to the service of the Jewish people. Isha, the Jewish people are likened to a woman, and God the male. In the time of the Golas, Zeria, the Zera means seed, referring also to the seeds that we've been planting for thousands of years through all the Torah and mitzvot we've been doing as a nation in this world. The seed that you're planting in the earth. Haboyim Yesharsha Yaakov, Yesharsh Yaakov, referring to the source of Yaakov, going on the Jewish people. And through the planting of seeds, in other words, the Torah and mitzvot the Jewish people have been doing throughout the time of our exile. Naasias Hatzmicha. Now it's going to come time for the seed to sprout, to give forth life. The Gula Mitzvah Shlema, when this is referring to the true and complete redemption. Meaning there will be no further exile, and this will be the full and final redemption. It's known, it says that the work that we do in the time of the exile is directly connected to the seeds you plow are what you will reap. You reap what you sow. In other words, the efforts that you put forth now in these moments of the exile are precious, because all the energy that you put forth, that good energy, that is what's going to come back to you in your crops that you harvest in the days of Mashiach, when we know there'll be no further goals. There'll be no more time for this planting of seeds, because now is the time of these final moments that's taking place. The next step, of course, is we're going to reap all the wonderful fruits from our time that we've been working so hard in the exile. We're Metzora, and Metzora is the second half of Tazria, the second half of this double parsha. Kedisa b'Gemara, it says in the Gemara, Ma Shemo Shel Mashiach. What is his name of Mashiach? Hayora'ah de Be Rabbi Shmo, Metzora Shel Beit Rav. Rabbi, according to Rabbi, it says that who is Mashiach? He's an offspring of Rebbe, Shenamar Achen Cha'iluni, Ha'icheluna, who Na'asa Umechavenu Savalas Va'anachnu, Hashavonehu Nilga, Mucha Elohim Ma'ano. And it says that what is Mashiach? He's called as a leper. That's the name that's given to him in the Gemara. It says Mashiach is like a leper. And it says that he is sitting outside the gates of Rome with the other sick and diseased people, changing his bandages. This is a pasuk in the Gemara, and in Gemara Sanhedrin. And it says that he is suffering from our disease that he took upon himself, the sickness. This the sick people. So first we have to understand that everything that the other religions built on stole from Judaism. So this whole concept of that the Notzrim, that the Goyim stole, that Shem Yishmor Havdalah billion Havdalahs, that Yashki he died for our sins. That's a riff. That's a stolen concept of this whole idea of Mashiach. It's known that the leader of the generation in every generation takes upon the responsibility for the entire generation. And therefore it says, as the Rebbe expounded in Basi Lakani, every one of our Rebbes, the Mesiris Nefesh and self-sacrifice they took upon themselves. Because they suffered, that's why all our Rebbes have suffered tremendously, physically, spiritually, imprisonment, because the leader of the generation has to take responsibility for the entire generation. And basically, all the sickness and disease and impurity of the generation falls upon the leader. He takes that responsibility. More specifically, and now it's saying specifically in the continuation of this week's parsha, in the second half, Mitzorah, it says, this is the Torah of the Mitzorah, there's not a proper English definition for Mitzorah. We call it a leper. It's not really leprosy. We don't have a way, because there's no such disease in Tzoras that we have in our times. The closest thing, and for brevity's sake, we'll just call it leprosy. It's not really leprosy, but that's what it's become as called, because it's the closest English definition that means it. But it basically says, and this is the Torah of the Mitzorah, we'll just call it a leper, on the day of his purification. So interesting enough, this week's Parsha is referred to the name of Parshas Tahora, or the Parsha of Tahora, meaning of clean, of purity. And a Metzorah, or a leper, is the name of Mashiach in the time of the exile. It says that's what Mashiach's name is. It's a very strange name that we call Mashiach, huh? But the Gemara says that it is the Mashiach is called a Metzorah. He's called a leper in the time of the exile. Sha'af Metzarat Smayu Betachlis Ashlemus. Kamoshkosu Yahaschil Avdi Yorim and Nasi Gabon Ma'oy. And why does he have leprosy? Because he's suffering from the pains of the exile. It's very painful for our leaders to take upon themselves the suffering for all the things that are being done by the Yidden in the time of the exile. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of good things being done all the time. There is a lot of good things, but there's a lot not, and we're all one nation, and what we do affects one another, and everything affects the Nasi Ador, the leader. The Kaim, so Kai Alma Amdui, Metzabushal Mashiach. She said, Gada Bagula, as many so good, so when it's referring to the purification of the Metzorah in this week's Parsha, in the second half of it, this purification is referring on the situation of Mashiach when he reveals himself to the Jewish people in the true and complete redemption. So he's a Metzorah, he's a leper in the time of the exile, but he becomes pure along with all of us in the time of redemption. Okay, Gimel. Okay. Chaim Dov. Now here comes a barrage of questions. Aleph. Hakash Hashaychus, the base Parshiyos Tazria Metzorah. The connection and relevance to these two different parshas that are connected, Tazria Metzorah, the Chora, Hashem Tazria. Mora al Hagula. Tazria, which is the first parsha, which is all about giving birth. It's as if a woman gives birth to a male child, as we pointed out. This seems to be referring to redemption. This whole idea of giving birth is referring to redemption. But Ulai Hashem Metzorah. And on the other hand, Metzorah, the second half of the parsha, is talking about purification, and it's the opposite of Tahora. It's talking about a leper. The name is referring to a leper. Yesh Tarich Before Yechad. Kedei Lafo Hamamorat Tzav Mura'al Hagula. Hagalas. And just about Mishneh Yechad. So it seems that both of these names are opposites. Tazria which refers to giving birth, which seems to be connected to redemption, is all about the opposite. It's all about impurity. And Mitzora, which is a name on a leprosy, is all about purification. So the name seems to indicate the opposite of what the whole Parsha is talking about. Base, Ve'ikr. And the main thing the Rebbe says, but Noga the Hemshek of a Parsha, Tazria, Mitzora. The Hora Achri, Eshes ki Tazria Yoledar Zachar, Gula Anitzki Shein Achri Gos. Lo Shah Oilma Muradazal, Mitzra Shakasha Behaina Gos. And the Rebbe says, and furthermore, it seems like these parshas are mixed up. It should start out with Mitzora, which is referring to this process and then after and with Tazria. It says Tazria, which is all about giving birth. And it says this birth is connected to a male child, which is connected to the true and complete redemption, that there's no more exile. So how come right after it goes to Mitzora, which is all about exile, talking about a leper? They should be opposite the way that they're set up. And Gimel, va'al der exeva kol echad mebeis haparshis before b'fnei atzmai shema parshas biyachas letoich. We see that each one from the two parshas, that their names seem to indicate the relevance to their subject matter of the parsha, kind of we pointed out earlier. And it seems that the relevances of this of the parsha don't go in sync with their names. Parsha Tazria. Shema Parsha Mora Al Hagula. This is referring to the name, which is referring to redemption. Yet throughout the continuation of the parsha, it's discussing Nageim, disease, which is referring not to redemption, but to exile. And then we see Parsha's Mitzora, which his name is seems like it's connected to the exile, because it's a leper, a Mitzora, someone who's leprosy. Yet the continuation of the parsha is all about purification, which is indicative of redemption. So the names seem to be the opposites of what is inside the content of the parsha. The Chora, and seemingly, Kivan sheshem haparsha mibata umagish tochen haparsha. Since the name of the parsha is expressing and emphasizing the content of the parsha, Matim Yoser Shah Parsha Jamadubar Bideni Nagiim Tikra B'Shem Mitzora. The one that is the first parsha should be called Mitzora, and the second parsha should be called Israel. Okay, Dalit. All the Shmo Shal Mashiach, and as it's connected also to the name of Mashiach. Kivan Mashiach Hu Go Alam shall call Israel. Since Mashiach is the redeemer of the Jewish people, Lama Madgishim B'Shmo in Agavas Aide Krishma B'Shem Mitzora. Why is he referred to his name in the exile? His name in the exile is referred to Mitzora, the one with leprosy. He's our redeemer. That's what you call him. You're referring to him in his name connected to the gullus of a disease of leprosy. Doesn't seem like a very fitting name for our redeemer. So lots of questions we have here, and now let's start tackling them. Dalit. And it's connected to this concept of Nagiim, of disease or sickness or leprosy, whatever it is. It says if a person has this blemish on his skin, the author Rebbe brings down in the Kuti Torah, that and now we're seeing the Rebbe is going to put a whole twist on this. If you ask 99% of Orthodox Jewry why someone has tsaras, they're going to tell you what? Lashon Hara. You speak Lashon Hara, you get a skin blemish. But the Rebbe is in typical Mashiach fashion is going to challenge that, not to take away from the pshat, but to reveal a much deeper connection to this disease and what it's caused. And he's quoting the Alter Rebbe from Likutei Torah, where it says that a person who is on a very, very high level, Adam who's normally kosher in all other matters, התחתונה שבו לא נשבר הרע. הפסולוס ממנו ונולדים סימנים בגשמים בבשרי. That he has the ability, the potential, it says that still, that even though he's on a high level, there's part of him that has not been completely rectified. And therefore, the outermost part of his skin has a sign of impurity. Heim negi'in, this is called nega, this impurity, the psulot, the impure parts of the skin, or again, we're just saying leprosy because it's easier to say, but it's not really what it is. And therefore, because in a spiritual sense, in the service of Hashem, there still needs a little bit of fixing left of this evil that has not been transformed completely to good. And therefore, this very slight impurity, he calls it, like a tinge, the very, very most external parts that has still not been refined or rectified. This causes a blemish on the skin. But the Rebbe points out, and he emphasizes, rak bechitzonius, only very, very external. It's not touching the essence of the person. And now it's bringing the pasuk from this week's parsha, that it says if a person has a little bit of this blemish on his skin, it's called saras. Or b'saroi, which is the skin of the flesh. And it's not shaykh, the Rebbe says, to say that this is touching his essence, because it's not. It's very, very external. It's not even shaykh to say that it's in his skin. We know that something that affects someone when he eats or drinks, it becomes part of your actual flesh, of your being. Or mesaviv mevasar, and this is the reflective on the very external part of the skin. B'or b'saroi gufo adam ki yeh b'or b'saroi haynu she'ein zeh devar haregel ela mokreh hayotza negadar haregil v'gam az harizeh rak naga tzaras naga meloshen negia haynu she'ein nabliti ratzui eino shaykh lechatzoni yisayif ela rak b'noika. And it's a very, very external blemish, the Rebbe says, to the point that it's a consequence of the light not fully being absorbed into the vessel, as we will explain shortly. By the way, this is one of the most Mashiach-dik sichas of Noraflan base, and it's something that requires multiple learnings and reviews, and we don't have the benefit of going too deep these days because we try to keep our time limit of 2 hours. But there's a lot here, and the Rebbe is giving us very clear instructions on why the world is in a state of chaos right now, on why we see what appears to be complete disorder and total corruption and mess beyond anyone has ever seen before, and how we can fix it. So let's continue. And furthermore, and a continuation of Likuti Torah, the author explains that this nagim, this thing that's just touching the surface of the skin, which is called saras, is a result of very high lights. That it's not called tameh, it's not called impure, and the Kohen has not said it's impure. כשעדיין לא קרא לו שם טמא, אין נוגעים בכל טומאה. And it's not called like literally on this thing of tuma. It's not named tuma. Tuma is something that's impure. El adrabah, on the contrary, haim oiros elyonim. Rather, they're called very high, big lights. Rak shehem dina keshia de kedusha. That these lights are so high and so lofty that it's challenging for them to enter into the body. There's a lot we can say about this, and it's a long sikha, so I don't really want to go into it too much right now. But just briefly, everything operates on orot and kelim, light and vessels. Hey sis, thank you. Lights and vessels mean everything that comes down into this world is orot v'kelim. It's lights or energy and vessels to contain that energy. So what happens, we see often, you see it's very common with Baal Teshuvos. I know people, for example, who, not necessarily even just Baal Teshuvos, we deal with a lot of people at the center who come from the fold, who've gone off the path and who have come back. And they tell me, they're like, I don't understand. Everything was great, and I started putting on tefillin again, and my life became hell. It became very, very difficult. Why? Why is God making my life more difficult when I'm doing now all of a sudden more mitzvah? So anytime you add in lights, you add in shadow. The higher you climb up the ladder of spirituality, the more negative energy you attract. And the more important it is for that light to go into the vessels, right? So it's known, this is one of the main reasons according to Kabbalah why a woman must cover her hair when she's married. Because once a man is married, his energy, his light, the primary place it goes into is his wife. And if a wife's hair is not covered, that energy can release from her hair. And it's like pouring water into a pot with holes in it. The same thing in multiple areas of Kedusha we're dealing with. And often we find when someone is getting closer to Hashem, closer to the Rebbe, doing things that are drawing more light into his life becomes more challenging. And it seems to be not making sense, but it does make sense. Because what's happening is God is saying now, you wanted more lights, you're taking more lights, you're drawing more light down into the world. Now you have to have stronger vessels to contain that light. Because if your vessels are not strong enough to contain that light, they're going to break. And the result of that is you're going to start attracting negative energy to you. And all of a sudden you're going to see more opposition, more. When you're trying to do things, it's more difficult than it was before. There's all of a sudden you're having negative energy that wasn't there before. It's because it's attracting the light, it's attracting it. And so it's more and more important, the higher we go in Kedusha, that we have proper vessels to contain this energy. So the Rebbe is referring now to this idea of tzaras, which is this very, very high godly energy that is in this world right now, because we're on the threshold of the redemption. So because there's so much light in this world that is not going into the vessels, I don't want to get ahead of myself because we're going to talk about that now. The result is the spiritual blemish, not only on us individuals, but in the world as a whole. And when their light doesn't go in the vessel, you have a concept what is called yanika. Yanika is when the forces of evil are like leeches, and they're going to suck. They're going to look for every opening they can. Anytime there's discord in your home, in your relationships with friends, with family, whatever it is, when there's anger, when there's frustration, when there's any negative energy, that's the opposite of God. That's known as Sitra Achra. Sitra Achra doesn't necessarily mean you're not eating kosher. There's people who are kosher 100% by the book and doing everything halachically they're supposed to do, but they draw a lot of energy from Sitra Achra from the other side because they're angry all the time or they're depressed all the time, and that's separating the Shekhinah. So when the Shekhinah cannot dwell within you, that energy is sucked from the other side, and that's what causes a lot of times people to feel down. So now we're dealing with these big lights that are in the world, and how we're going to get them into a proper vessel, because that's what Mashiach is about. It's about how we're going to make a proper vessel, because all the light is here. We don't need more light. All the light that we need for redemption is already drawn into this world. All we're doing right now is in the final from here, we're just putting it into vessels. And if we don't put it in the vessels, guess what happens? The Sitra Achra, the forces from the other side, take that energy and they use it for what you see in the world right now, which is total destruction and chaos and everything they're attempting to do. Which is why it says if all the Jewish people kept Shabbat, one Shabbat, the next Shabbat, Mashiach would already be here. Because all that energy that comes into the world in Shabbos, it doesn't go in proper vessels, because there's many people who are not keeping Shabbat. So there's many ways of putting that light into the vessels, but we're going to talk about that now. Okay, hey, v'yesh l'mar shebeis iminim ele teluim zeh b'zeh. So now the Rebbe says these two matters that are connected to the impurity that's on the very external part of the skin and the very high lights that are not going down, one is dependent upon the other. That Nagim, that this impurity on the skin, and its essence is coming from a very high level, from a very lofty place. Orot El Yoinim, they're called upper lights. And therefore, when these lights come down into the world, they manifest themselves, if they don't have a proper vessel to go into undesirable things. And therefore, the energy, as we just said, is sucked from external forces. This is called klipot, or shells, or sitra achra. Sitra achra means anything that is against God. And it's a very, very external part of the light, because the bulk of the light is still able to go in the vessel. It's just the little bits that needs refinement. Because we learned in previous sichas, if you conquer a land 95% or 99%, and you still leave 1% not conquered, it's not conquered. Because one little drop could cause an uprising and take the whole thing out. So one little bit of unrectified energy has the ability to upheaval everything else that has been rectified. And therefore also a tikkun of fixing up this thing through revealing the true matter of these very high lights. This is the Torah of the Metzora, the leper, on the day of his purification. And the purification is called Yom, which means day. And this is referring to lights or and Yom. It says on the first day, God created lights. So Yom is considered light, and Laila, darkness, is considered night. And it says that God called the light day. And this is referring to revealing of these very highlights. Okay, Vav. So now let's explain this a little bit. It's a beautiful sikha. Sivas afsharis yanikas chetzonim. The cause that allows the possibility of the yanika, of the sucking of external forces, which is the opposite of purity. This comes from these very high lights, which causes negim, which causes the blemish. Because the lights are coming from such a very high place, they're not able in the current state that they're coming down to enter or enclose into the vessels. And the result of this, the Rebbe says, And it's interesting, this is the exact same lashon that the Rebbe used the week before when he said, I've done all I can to bring Mashiach. Now I'm empowering you to do all you can to bring Mashiach. But orot v'tohu v'kelim v'tikkun. The Rebbe said, with these highlights of tohu, but in the vessels of tikkun. And now a week later, the Rebbe is saying the reason that Mashiach is not here completely and the final task that upon us is these highlights are here, but they're not in the vessels of tikkun of this world. And therefore the result is undesirable things because they're sucking that energy. Remember, a shadow or darkness has no independent existence. The shadow only exists when there's light. There's no shadow at nighttime. The bigger the light, the bigger the shadow. There's tremendous energy in the world right now. There's tremendous good in the world right now. Those who see in a deeper reality see, wow, unbelievable light, redemption, unbelievable good coming in the world. But to an untrained eye or a eye that only sees begashmias, it's hell. The world looks like it's collapsing. And that's just because there's so much light and you have all this darkness sucking that energy, And the result we have is what we see here today, outside in the world. The Indian Avodas Hadam. So now, what is the service? How do we deal with this? Tenua shall ratzayim. Shu in klalos klal hanefesh. Shu chal tichero or hanefesh. V'istachol min hakelim. V'yut hakelim shalom. Yabechinas hispashtus lamat. Eli histalek lamara v'klal or Hashem. And these very big upper lights that are not enclosed in the vessels, and they're caused from the movement of ratzay or going. And this is the concept of klavut nefesh, that you want to just expire and run to God. That's what happened to Aaron's sons. And therefore, the light comes out from the vessel. And the diminishing of the vessel, that it's not, so it can't come and spread down below. So what is happening? The light is going back up above. And this allows for the forces of evil to suck that energy. Because it's not drawn down into the level of shov, or drawing that energy back into the world, into matters of holiness. And therefore, this ratzoi without shoiv, the energy that's going out of the vessel without returning to the vessel, is allowing for the forces of evil or impurity to suck from it. This is like the idea of prayer without Torah. Because prayer is the idea of setting energy up, but if you're not learning Torah, you're not bringing it back down. The eitzil is and what? So what's the eitzil? So what's the cure? It says in the Sefer Yetzirah. And if your heart runs, return to one. And after ratzoi is shoiv. Every divine energy of going up must return back down. And this is the idea of what we call bittul, or bittul metzias. Total nullification to God. Now, bittul is a very interesting term, because remember, there's Kabbalah Sol Klalit and Kabbalah Sol Prati. Kabbalah Sol Klalit is keeping Torah, doing mitzvot, tefillah, the three columns that the world stands on, the three pillars, Torah, tefillah, and good deeds. But then there's Kabbalah Sol Prati. That is, what does God specifically want from you? And are you bringing God into the challenging areas of your life, whatever they may be? In all the details, specifically. And this is the idea of Bittul Metzias. Bittul Metzias is not only, I'm serving God, doing Torah and mitzvot, but in other capacities of your life, it's not going so hot because there's tension. There's light's not going into the vessels. There's friction. Anytime there's friction in someone's life, and we all have it from time to time, hopefully it shouldn't be too frequently, it's a sign from God that something's wrong. That the energy he's given you is not going into the vessels around you in a proper way. And that's in multiple fronts. That's with yourself, in your home, your wife, your kids, your family, in your work, in your relationships with your friends, whatever the case may be. Because often you find people who have challenges follow them around wherever they go, right? So they're always butting heads with people. They're always banging heads and rubbing, and there's always confrontation with other people, and they can't figure out what the hell's wrong with everyone else. Well, usually if it's happening in numerous sequences, it's not everyone else, right? So these are the type of work we have to do internally to work and get to the root of these things and fix it. Otherwise, what happens is we loop. And the same problem keeps coming over and over and over again, and it doesn't go away until it gets fixed. כמו שאנו רואים בבוא האבן לפני המלך, שבו מקרוב מאוד לעמוד לפני המלך, אז לא נשאר בו כוח ועוז. ואם שהסברתם במציאות לגמרי, בצד הבית, יבוא ההשבעה, יתפשט כלים וכלים, שירים למטה דווקא. ועל זה נשלם הכוונה העליונים, שנצאה בקדוש ברוך הוא להיות לא יירס בתחתונים דווקא. And this is what it says. It's like a servant, literally, who's standing before a king, and in total self-nullification, and his nullification of his whole existence. And therefore, it is that he's from in his vessels, from all his vessels, everything below. He has completion of drawing down these high energy of lights in order to make a dwelling place for God below. We heard this concept a lot. Dira b'tachtonim, a dwelling place below. That means God wants to dwell not just in the world, but in your world, in your body. If you're tense, nervous, uptight, frustrated, angry, there's no room for God. If your home is tense, frustrated, angry, yelling, screaming, bad energy, there's no room for God. If your work, if your friendships, if your relationships, God's not there. God just doesn't want a dwelling place in the world at large. That's why there's so many different Jewish people in different capacities in different countries and different relationships and different situations, because God wants to dwell in the details, in every detail of every vessel of your life. And therefore it's necessary to have this idea of shoiv, after ratzon. Meaning it's one thing to say, I love you, God. I'm here for you, God. I want to keep your Torah. I want to do your mitzvahs. I want to be a good servant. And then you come home and you scream at your kids and yell at your wife, and you're breaking things and smashing things because you're angry, and you're getting in a fight with your boss, and you're telling your neighbor off, and now you're not shov. You're not returning that energy back into the details of your life. Because those very big lights, and guess what? A lot of times, the more Torah and mitzvah you do, and the more holy you become, the harder this test gets. Because the more energy and the more lights that you're approaching God with, the more God has to come into the tiniest vessels of your life, right? If you're shooting off a little bit of light, you only need a little bit of vessel for that. But the more light that you're working in, the more Jews you're helping, the more Torah you're learning, the more mitzvot you're doing. Guess what? That's more energy that you need to put down in every detail of your life. Otherwise, what happens is that energy gets sucked and goes to the other side. And therefore, what we need to do is we need to unify both of these energies, Ratzoy v'Shoiv. an energy of running to God, and an energy of bringing God into every aspect of your life. Up and down, chesed v'gavor, giving and restraint. And in order to do that, we have to utilize and we have to connect to an energy that's above both of them. And this is the level of Tiferet. Tiferet is the center. Because the sphere of Keter directly gives birth to Tiferet. No, there's so much deep stuff in here. It's already a halfway part, and I'm nowhere near halfway through the sikha, so I don't want to keep talking. But there's a lot of good stuff in here we can go on about. But for time constraint, let's continue. So Keter, or the light of redemption, or Moshiach, is drawn down directly into Tiferet, which is the body. Your body it's the place that all your extremities, everything, your head, your lower, your legs, all come together in one place. That's all of your energy has to be centered, has to be focused, has to be complete state of oneness with Hashem in every detail of your life. And then you can unify these two opposite energies. Right and left, up and down, going and returning. And now you can take those very high energy, the very high lights of God, and draw them down into the vessels of your everyday life. And this is the idea of purifying the leper. And this is the Torah of the Mitzvah, of the leper, on the day of his purification. Torah Mitzvah, the Torah of the leper. And the fixing is through Oisek for Torah. The term is not loimed Torah. It's not learning Torah. It's Oisek Torah. What is Oisek? Oisek is work. It's what a businessman does. He toils. He works. It's effort. It's not just deep concentrated effort. And the Rebbe says that the main way of dwelling, of really digging in the Torah, is through bittul. It is because if there's any sense of gaiva there, a feeling of self, you're blocking the energy once again. We're talking about sometimes minor adjustments. The difference between energy going in the vessel and going out of the vessel, remember, we're talking about a disease that is on the very external part of the skin. We're moving in very slight details. A lot of times, there's tiny changes, tiny dove. I don't have to tell you. Sure, they teach you in marksmanship, and when you're shooting a rifle, when you're aiming at a target, if it's off at the barrel of the gun, a fraction of a millimeter, the further that bullet goes out, the more it veers off course. We're talking about sometimes minor adjustments that make major differences. And my soul is like dust. And afterwards says, and open my heart to your Torah. What does it mean my soul is like dust? It means we don't realize how quickly, once we bring more light in, how the Yetzer jumps on it in 2 seconds and starts puffing us up right away, right? We start looking around with a critical eye of, what other people are doing wrong, this guy's not doing this right, and that guy's not doing that right, and this guy's not a Hasidish, and he's not davening correctly, because we start feeling that we're more important than someone else, or we're better than someone else. Like, oh, she's not sneeze, I can't believe she dresses like. We start, looking at others, comparing them to our level of Yiddishkeit. That's ego. These are all the time. We have to constantly do Hibonanot. We have to sit all the time in thought and contemplating, talking to Hashem, helping rectify us, helping pull off this negative energy. It's a non-stop work. Tshuva is something that is done daily. It's not a one-time, I'm about tshuva. It's constantly readjusting and retuning and retuning. It's Chassidus talks about polishing a vessel. First, you have to take the coarse paper to get all the impurities out, and then you get the finer paper, and then you have to keep polishing and polishing with less grade, and shining and shining. It's never-ending work. It's not the one and done. And by making yourself nullified, like the dirt from the earth, like David HaMelech said, I'm like a worm, I'm nothing before you. This was the king. So how much more so us? This is the vessel for the Torah. And then, we're able to draw down this divine energy from above the chain of creation into the physical world. And the Rebbe says, Bechinas Tiferet, and this is Tiferet. Tiferet is beauty. It's the center. It's balance. It's harmony. It's when everything flows. Tiferet zu ma'an Torah. And the ultimate beauty was the giving of the Torah. And therefore, it gives the power to unify two opposite movements of Ratzo v'Shayv. Also, the lights above that are drawn down and revealed into the vessels. And through this, you're able to nullify the possibility of any external impurity things sucking your energy. Because now these very high lights above can be drawn down and put in the vessels below. Zion. We're going to have to start moving a little quicker. But it's just there's so much amazing stuff in the Sikha. It's really meant for a proper upbringing to get through because there's a lot. Okay. So, and from this we can understand the connection to the redemption in a matter of going from Golus to Geula. Golus. What is Golus? The Rebbe says very simple. Golus is when the light and the light of God is concealed and hidden. That's Golus. It's exile. You don't see God. You're not aware that God is with you in your challenges. It doesn't mean that the Rebbe says Moshiach here. It doesn't mean that it's just on cruise control and wow, kick back, go to the beach, drink a couple martinis and we have no more challenges in our life. No. It means that whatever we're going through, God is with us. And God is guiding us. And again, when we find ourselves looping, when the same challenge keeps happening over and over again with the same person or the same people or the same situation, and you keep scratching your head and we keep looking outside and looking to blame the person or the problem, it doesn't work that way. The Baal Shem Tov tells us anything that's happening in your life is a result of what's going on inside of you. I don't care if it's your wife, if it's your boss, if it's your neighbor, if it's your best friend, if it's your children. When you're seeing things that are happening that are not to your liking or that are causing unsettling feelings inside of you, you can't. It says when you try to fix your wife, it's like looking in a mirror and trying to fix the image in the mirror. She's reflecting what's going on inside of you. So. And again, I'm not just talking about your wife. It's with your children. It's with everything in our lives. The energy we see outside of us, and especially if it keeps happening, if the same thing keeps happening and happening and happening, we have to take a step back and say, what do I need to work on inside of myself? It's an amazing thing because when you start doing that work inside of yourself, it starts fixing around you. I can tell you stories all day long about changes in my home, changes in my surroundings, changes in people that I had problems with that were always banging heads. I can tell you situations where I was like this with people and I didn't say a word to the person. I took a step back and said, what is this person showing me? And I worked on myself, and all of a sudden that same person who looked at me like this was super friendly and nice to me. They're automatically fixed. It's amazing because your energy is causing the energy outside it. So this is the whole idea of the idea of that God is concealed. We don't see God. This is exile. And furthermore, and we don't see the signs that God is showing us. He's all day long. God is talking to us, but it's brought down. It's a still, soft voice. It's not screaming. It's not very low. It's the feeling inside that something's not right. Maybe outside there's noise, but He's trying to guide us to the right path. But for whatever reason, we shut the voice down and we stay in the loop. And not only that, it becomes dark. Not only do we not see the signs God giving us, we just see darkness around us. We feel that there is no God. We feel that it's just, I just got to deal with this crap, whatever it is. And not only that, we're in the end of the exile, and therefore the darkness is doubled and doubled and doubled over again. It's super dark right now. And the reason it's so dark is because there's a tremendous amount of light coming down into this world right now. And that light, as we said earlier, is above the vessels that are around us. And therefore, we see darkness. And therefore, when these lights come down, the result is the concealing and hiding of God, because you're not putting them in the vessels properly. Darkness. We see darkness. And therefore, because of the darkness, forces of evil are sucking from us. And since their source is from a very high place, the very high levels of lights, now you have the opposite of pure. You have impure. And therefore what we have is this very external blemish of the skin. And therefore, in order to fix this up through our deeds and service in the time of the exile, we have to reveal the true matters of the exile. And the way we fix this, the Rebbe says, is not by nullifying the exile. You don't push away darkness, but transforming the exile to redemption. By revealing and drawing down the Aleph, Alufil Shel Olam, bringing God into every aspect of your life. Nasa Goila, the Geula. This transforms Gola, or exile, to Geula, or redemption. And remember, God is it's an interesting term, right? Because it just doesn't mean learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. It means bringing God into every aspect of your life. Your home, your wife, your kids, your neighbors, your surroundings, your work, your everything, your mitzvah, everything you're doing, God has to be revealed in. And if there's one area of your life, or more, like most, that God is not present, there's going to be strife. There's got to be strife. And this is how we transform the Galus to the Geula. These very high lights that are not going into the vessels and are being sucked by the forces of impurity. We put them into the vessels. V'yeshamar, there's to say, that the advantage of our deeds and service in the times of the exile this is from the side of the bittul that we must focus on in the time of the exile. Nullification, self-nullification. It's the hardest thing to do when you're having strife in your life, and I don't care what it is. I remember I went through this with my work for a while. I was similar struggle. I see people have it with their wives, people have it with their kids, people have it. I had it in my office. And that doesn't mean my office is like everything smooth sailing now, but for a while, it was just like nonstop. And I kept trying to fix the problem. And I finally got to the point. It's just, this is what the Baal Shem Tov says. There's every single time there's resistance or opposition in your life, and I don't care in your life, I don't care where it's coming from, in any aspect of your life. Because it's not the outside things, it's what's going on inside of you. Anytime you have resistance, opposition, energy that's coming and it keeps coming, step no one, surrender, put your head down and say, it's God. It's not my boss, it's not my neighbor, it's not my kid, it's not my wife, it's God. Nothing in this world could come down without God allowing it to. So the first step is surrender. I put my head down and say, the source of what is happening is God. God is talking to me through wherever that negative energy is coming. What am I going to do about it? Now you have to do separation. This is bittul. Bittul is when you're pulling yourself away from the problem. And sometimes it's hard to do that, which is why you need mishpiyim, guides, therapists, whatever, help groups, whatever it is, farbrengens. People outside of you could help you assess with a clearer eye what's going on. You separate yourself through bittul, meaning you remove yourself from the problem and you know there's something going on. You fix it inside you, because that's the only thing we can fix in this world. You can't fix anyone else but ourselves. And then we re-enter the situation with a new lens. That's called sweetening. Bringing God back into that. And that is wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, and repeat in every aspect of our lives. Because the bittul of mysterious nefesh, of self-sacrifice, is this more in the time of exile than any other time. Now is the time for this work. And through the nullification of mysterious nefesh from the level of yechida, is connected and receiving the level of yechid, oneness, that is above stereo hishtashlos. There's so much, there's diamonds with the Rebbe saying right here. He's saying, what is bittul, mysterious nefesh? It's from the level of yechida, which is yechid, meaning the origins of your soul above, when you're one with God, down here below. Mysterious nefesh and bittul is total surrender to God in every aspect of your life. Again, it's not just, but I'm learning Torah and doing mitzvot. Total surrender to God in every aspect of your life. And this is how we can combine these two energies. The energy that's coming down and the energy that's going up, and making sure it all goes into vessels. And now these very high lights can come down and be entered into the vessels. Okay. Ches. I'll move on. Hakash Rahashaychas Rahemshek Parshiyas Tazriya Mitzvah. Inin Hanagiyim B'Parshiyas Tazriya. B'Torasam B'Parshiyas Mitzvah. We can understand the connection and the relevance to the continuation of these Parshiyas Mitzvah Tazriya Mitzvah. With the matter of the Nagiyim, Parshiyas Tazriya, the impurity or the tzaras, and the purification, Parshiyas Mitzvah. Kivan he is Galus in Hamiti Shahagos. Because the Rebbe says in Moshiach comes, it's not that the Galus gets nullified, but the true inner dimension of the Galus gets revealed. And therefore, after the prefacing of the general idea, the woman who gives birth to a male child, is referring to the general service in the time of the exile. So it is a boy in the Gula Mitzvah Shlema She'ein Achri Galus. And after this, it brings about the true complete redemption, that there's no exile afterwards. And we see these details in the continuation of the Parsha. Parsha Tazria. Medubar be'inin hanagim, kevan shenagim heim ores hayonim, as we said earlier, that these are connected to the very big, lofty lights. Shumshacha v'izgada lamata b'hagula, that will be drawn down and revealed below in the redemption. The Parshas Metzora, Medubar ores tahora hanagim, referring to the purification of this high energy or lights. Kevan shehataras hanagim, hi ayeh izgadas haninim amiti shahanagim. This is through revealing the true inner depth of what this blemish is caused by. Hainu shetoichnoi shel geula hu inin the metzora the ma'aloisa ba'ofen shenish lalas avshariyos ha'inin havchi kula nitzi shein achar galus. Okay, good. We got a big brackets here that we could skip, make up some time. And now we can understand more connected to the name of Mashiach, who's referred to a Metzora, a leper. Metzora shel beit Rabbi, a leper from the house of Rebbe. It's Yetiv be'eni ani sitting amongst the poor people and suffering from their disease. And Mashiach, the Rebbe says, we already find him now in this world, right now, in the time of the exile. In case there's any confusion as to whether or not Mashiach is here, the Rebbe is telling us once again that he is. He's right now amongst us in the exile. Tzapa b'kotza ruach b'kloyun ininim izgalus. The Melech HaMashiach Go'alas Yisrael Go'ul Amitis HaShlema She'ein Achrigot Psak in Rambam Yoiv Melech HaMebeis Adam. And make no mistake about it, that Melech HaMashiach is the one who's going to take us out of this exile, and he's going to redeem all the Jewish people and bring forth the true and complete redemption, as it says in the Psak Din of Rambam, which we are finishing up this week. Yoimed Melech HaMebeis David, and a king will stand up from the house of David. Okay, test. Amor le'el kashor gam im perki sheni da'avs. And this is also connected to the second parak of Perki Avos that we are going to be learning this Shabbos, since we did the first one last Shabbos. I lost my place. Oh, here we are. What Rebbe says, what is the straight path for a man to walk on? Says that that brings that he's looked at it with a good eye, that brings beauty to him and from in the eyes of God and the eyes of his fellow man. They look at him in a good way. And we see this precise language in the Mishnah, what it says. Aleph. What is the straight path? That it's he's going and it is pleasurable in his ways of Hashem. Adam, Daika, Adam hu midrega gedola. Adam is the highest name given to a man. There's many names in the Torah for men. Adam, Ish, Gever. Adam is the highest. It's known that only a Yid can be going on the name Adam. Excuse me. And it's using Adam specifically, showing the highest level of a person's capacity. Gimel HaKasher the Baal HaAmor. What does it says? Who gave this Mishnah over? Rebbe. Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Lo Bishmoi. And we know that it doesn't give over his name. Rather, Rabbeinu HaKadosh is known as the author of the Mishnah is known as Rebbe. That's what he goes by, Rebbe. You see Rebbe, we know it's talking about Rabbeinu HaKadosh. So what does this mean? What is this? How is this connected to the revealing and coming of Mashiach? Rebbe Allah Na'amar im Mashiach Ma'isan Shechayin Akshav V'dai Hainu Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And according to Rebbe, it says, and if Mashiach is coming from the living, and for sure he's referring, it says Rabbeinu HaKadosh, then we see Hasubal Ta'achaluim that he's sitting and suffering from his disease amongst the other lepers, the disease of the exile. And he's a complete chassid. And he's complete in his divine service. Nevertheless, he's suffering. Why is he suffering? He's suffering from the sickness of the exile of the other people in the generation. So much the Rebbe is telling us between the lines here. But I'll continue. And that's why it says Mashiach. Mashiach is perfection. There's nothing, Mashiach is complete. But it says that Mashiach, he's changing his bandages. There's a whole long picture what that means. But the point is that a bandage, a Band-Aid, if someone is, God forbid, has a deep wound, you don't put a Band-Aid on it. A Band-Aid is for a very superficial wound, something that is easily healed. And it says that Mashiach, despite his perfection and his completion in every capacity, as the Rambam explains, he's still suffering. How is he suffering? Not from him. Right? What do you think? Why does the Rebbe say tachtum? The Rebbe needs to, he has sins, he has to ask forgiveness for it. It's not for him, it's for the Am, it's for the he's the leader, he takes everything upon himself. And now we see what it means when the Rebbe says, what is the straight path that a person should take? Adam, again referring to this very high level Adam. Adam is also Rosh Tevis for Adam, David, Mashiach. Adam Kai Al Adam Hazeh, referring to Kashamosh Hirin Ma'aser V'Tichon Devarim, someone who is kosher and is really, for the most part, is doing really good in his avodat Hashem. He only has a slight blemish on the very most external part of his skin due to the impurities that we've spent the last hour and 22 minutes talking about. And this is what is the exile. And this is a result of the exile. Kumo Rabbi, as Rabbi says, but in our generation, we're the final generation of the exile, and we're the heels of Mashiach. And we've already finished, the Rebbe says, and already completed all the matters of this service in the exile. Again, we're talking to in general the Jewish people, not each one of us. We also, the Rebbe is very clear on that. It doesn't mean that we're all Siddiqim. We still have to do our own work. But as a general nation, we have finished what is incumbent upon us. And we've already went on this matter, and it's necessary to do the continuation of the Galus. And therefore, we are all holding this final level. The final, just a little bit of impurity that needs to be stuck in that vessel. And so a question arises. Since we've completed all the service and work in the time of the exile, we're going to get now to the Pigazim. Ended off with a bang. So what is the straight path that we must do? The policy is godless based on Mashiach. The Rebbe says, what? So what if we're in the final moments and everything's been rectified except the tiny little bit of impurity at the end. So what is the straight path that the Rebbe is talking about as it pertains to our generation? I'm talking about Rabbeinu Hazakin in the Mishnah, that we're the last generation of exile, the beginning generation of redemption. So what can we do to bring about the Hisgalus, the revealing and coming of Mashiach right now? So what is the answer? Ki kol shihi tiferes la'asoi v'tiferes lo min hadar. Now the Rebbe is going to start bringing us into to wrap up the Sikha and fall mamish in actuality what we need to do. And the answer is that kol shihi tiferes la'asoi v'tiferes lo min hadar. That everything he does must be in a way of tiferet, or beauty, or completion. What is tiferet now? Kai al Torah. Tiferet is referring to the Torah. Tiferet zu ma'an Torah. Shemetzal goido ma'alis mekoicha l'chaver beis atenois. The Torah, since it comes directly from Hashem, has the ability and the advantage and the power to unify two opposite movements. Ratzoi, the going up, and shoiv, which is the returning. Sho'oreso yoinim, the very high lights, to be drawn down and put into the vessels. And this is revealing the true matters of the exile. That will bring about the nullification of the exile. And there will be no more exile. This paragraph right here is mandatory reading for every Lubavitcher in the world. Why are you calling the Rebbe Mashiach? He's a Rebbe. So now the Rebbe says, the reason why we can explain that the Torah is the straight path to reveal and bring Mashiach is connected to the two matters of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Melech, a Melech HaMashiach, he's a king, V'Rav, and he's a Rebbe. Shleimer, and so Melech, right? Rebbe Shlita, Melech HaMashiach. Melech is referring to his kingship. He's King Mashiach. That's his name. And Rebbe or Rav is referring to Shalem Torah as Kol Ha'am, the fact that he's going to teach Torah to the nation. And what is the difference between both of them? Excuse me. She'enin zeh HaMelech, Mashiach, Mora'a Hashpa'a, Ba'oifen Makif, Shenasit al Habito Kabbalas al Malchusay. And the difference between a Rav or a Rebbe and a king is that a king, a Melech, referring to Mashiach, is indicative of a hashpah, the influence he has on a nation, but oifen makif. There's something very unique about the Sirah of, this isn't inside, I'm just giving my own Perush explanation. There's something very unique about the Sirah of Malchus. Malchus is connected to what is known as Mamadi Kolomim and Soviet Kolomim. It's in the chain Hishtalshalus, meaning that Mamadi, the energy that's inside, that's going down this channel. Yet it's connected to Soviet Kolomim, or the energy of God that's outside this channel. And Malchus of the lower world becomes Keter of the upper world, of the world that's here, becomes Keter of the world below it. So Keter, Malchus, these are the two spheres that connect to both Makif and Penimi. It's very unique. No other sphere does that. So because they're connected to both Makif and Penimi, it has to have both aspects of this. It has to have Mamali or Penimi or inward light, and Makif or Soviv or surrounding light. And that's what the Rebbe is explaining now. The idea of Melech HaMashiach is this is Makif, this is surrounding light. And in order for this light to come to the people and for them to accept it, this is only through the surrender and nullification and receiving of his kingship. A king is not a dictator. A dictator imposes and enforces his will on another person. A dictator says, you do what I say, or I'm going to kill you, or send you to Siberia, or enslave you. That's not a king. A king says, God has appointed me and has anointed me to be your king. But for my energy of kingship to not only exalt me, but to affect you so you can be pulled into this beautiful light of redemption, you have to accept my kingship voluntarily. You have to want my kingship. Because if you don't want it, guess what happens? I can't give it to you. It's like God saying, I want to give you light, but you're not eating kosher food. You're not keeping Shabbos. How do you want my light to enter you when the path that I gave you, Torah and mitzvot, for that light to come down into you, you've cut off? He said, yeah, I want to be part of your life, God, but I'm going to eat what I want and do what I want. Doesn't work. You're separating the energy. It's the same thing. For Melech HaMashiach to be your king, and for his kingship and his energy to come to you, you have to accept it. If you don't accept it, you're separating, you're cutting it off. That's the first level, is Malchus of Mashiach. You have to accept the kingship of the king. The Einin, the Rebbe, Mashiach Ma'al, and the concept of Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, is Hashpah B'Ofen Penimi. The Rebbe, the Rav component, is that energy has to go inside of you. How? By learning the Torah of the king, of the Rebbe. And now you have the combination of both. And we see it's no problem in Lubavitch. Everyone's running to learn the Rebbe's Sichas, Maimarim. They're connected to the part of Rav, or Rebbe. But Melech, kingship. So what's going on? We're stopping the energy. Because you need both. The Rebbe says right now it's necessary to have the combination of both. Melech barav. Maki for surrounding energy and panimi or indwelling energy. And now you can unify these very high level of lights that are above from the chain of creation. By putting them into the vessels of the world. And now the Rebbe is going to give another Hazak and explaining us how we're going to do this precisely. And we see this is very apropos into the time we're in the month of Iyar. It's the second month of the year when we're counting. It's known you count the months from Nisan. And now we're drawing down a service from below to above. After we had the culmination of the divine energy coming from above to below, which is Nisan, now we're beginning the process of lifting that energy back up. This is the miracles, the double miracles of the month of Nisan. And God, the King of Kings, revealed himself to us. This is the month of redemption, the month of Nisan. It's not only redemption, it means redemption from all boundaries and all limitations that you're in your life. The continuation of the months of Gash. The Kasher unites and brings them together. The base ER. Now we see that we have to take these two levels of drawing down the highlights from Nisan and elevating them for the following one in ER. And we do this by combining through, as we've learned earlier, something that is higher than both of them. And what do we see this in? This is in Beit ER. This is Sunday. Yom Yishayim the Pratim Chodesh Iyar. Tiferet Shabbat Tiferet. This is the Sphera of Tiferet Shabbat And the whole Sikha, if you chop, is all about Tiferet. It's all about this completion. Excuse me. Tiferet is the center bolt. Everything comes. The keter, the head, the arms, the legs, the lowers, all into the body. The body's, that's what it's about. We're not here for our brains. We're a higher connection up above. It's the heart and the body. It's the central. And BTR is Tiferet Tiferet. And therefore, through Tiferet, we can combine both of these movements of going and returning. And the revealing of the very highlights in the month of Nisan, the month of redemption. Now we have to draw these very big lights back down through our service to nullify any capabilities of external forces sucking our lights. And this will bring forth the true and complete redemption. In other words, ER is for the letters representing Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rachel, the two legs of the chariots, the four legs of the chariot, excuse me. These are referring to the three avos, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, and they are the lights. And Rachel, which is the level of Malchus, she is the vessel. And this is what the idea of unifying these very big lights with the vessels. In addition to this, Rachel is indicative of the advantage of our deeds and service in the times of the exile. That we've been working so hard to bring redemption. Because she was crying for the Yid. Inenu daika. Kivan shekadosh baruch hu b'geloisei salik. The Ayla. The Ayla Puala Seishal Rachel. Bisman of Galus. Rachel is referring to this deeds in our service in the time of the exile. This will bring forth the redemption. And the very highlights that were up and up will be drawn down and going down below. It's just repeating this play of Orot and Kipling. And then the capacity for impurity to suck from this energy will be nullified. And then we will have redemption with no more exile to follow it. In addition to this, the kasher zeh gam im chayom umiuchad b'sfiras ha'imar malchus shebetiferes. And the Rebbe says, and now we can add on to this and connect to the unique sphera of malchus shebetiferes, which is when the sikha was given. The preface, that we're in the counting of the Omer. The Kaladim calling in Ha'avoda, Him Benagal Nefesh Ha'adam, the Tikon Ethna Shosenu, V'Ruchasenu, and Shosenu, that we see the connection to the service of a person, of our soul, to fix up our soul and through the work we're doing here. The Tereno Kedishenu, to purify it and make it holy. This is referring to our general service in the world. To bring down an abundance of new energy and light into the world. And by bringing forth the true and complete redemption, there'll be no more exile from it. We say every day in the Shemon Esrei prayer, O merciful one, return us to our service in the base of Mikdash immediately. And we see a specific advantage to this year where we find ourselves. That the first day of Pesach fell on Shabbat. And we see that the excuse me. Since we start counting the Sphira, the beginning of the Sphira, that year we started counting on Motzi Shabbat because the first night was Erev Shabbat. So we start counting the Sphira on the second day. And therefore, in that year, we had the mitzvah of counting the Sphira of Omer is it says 7 Shabbatot. It should be 7 complete weeks of counting. And when they start on the first day of the week, which is the beginning of creation, it's what we say perfection. Malchus, Melech Mashiach, and 7 is connected to Malchus, which is connected to Melech Mashiach. And it says that Mashiach himself, that he's connected to this level of strength and power of the redemption, that there's no obstacles that can possibly get in his ways. It's known that the word of God will be fulfilled. We know how the story ends. We win. The question is just going to be how it plays out. And Amar Maka Ikar Torah, including his ability to take out anything that opposes him. Nothing stands in the way of the king or the will of the king. But Oimek Yoiser, in the deepest way, and we know that all the people who are members of his kingship or of his country are connected and dependent on the king. And therefore we see that it's not shaykh to say that there's anything that could be in the way of the king. Something that can stand in the way of the king for fulfilling the will of God? Impossible. Because any opposition is dependent on the king. In other words, there's nothing that could get in our way because we're connected to the king. When you're connected to the king, you plow through anything. And this is about bringing forth the redemption. And that his kingship of Melech HaMashiach is emphasizing this concept of there will be no more concealment of the galus, and all opposition will be removed, and we'll have redemption. And since we see the entire existence of the world is dependent on redemption, we're all waiting for the redemption. As it says, the only thing is on Mashiach himself. And the Rebbe said, any obstacles that you see that appear to be in opposition are not really there. They're very chitzoni. They're just like the tzaras on the very surface of the skin, because there's nothing that stands in the way of the king. And to nullify these undesirable things, how you do it? It's by revealing the true nature of the world, which is malchus, it's kingship. He's galdos the malchus. And so how do we reveal the kingship of Melech HaMashiach? Malchus is the seventh in Midah. That's sort of the seventh generation. So we see Malchus, Sheba Chesed, Sheba Gavor, Sheba Tifer, etc., all the way to Malchus, Sheba Malchus, as referring to the rectification of the Sfirot. Al Pi Ma'amru Shal Rebbe Shal Derech Yeshara is Galus with the Mashiach Tiferes. And according to what we already said, as we quoted from Rebbe, the direct path to redemption and bringing Mashiach is through Tiferes. And the Rebbe says, and from this we can understand that the main way of bringing about Tiferes, because we talked about Tiferes for a long time. In the last 15, 20 minutes, we've been talking about Malchus, which is the king, which is the Melech, Mashiach. He's connected to the number 7, or Malchus. So what is the Segula, the Rebbe says, for redemption? It's Tiferes and Malchus together. Malchus Sheba Tiferes. That's the key. We need Tiferet and we need Malchus. The Rebbe says, we don't have to wait for the continuation of the sphere to get to Malchus Tiferet. And then after all the details of Malchus that comes after that, all the different spheres of Malchus up into Malchus Sheba Malchus, which is revealing of his kingship. Malchus Kodomim, the kingship of all the worlds. The Im Keter B'Pnimiyas Keter, including Keter in the innermost dimension of Keter, Keter El Yoin Ihu Keter Malchus, referring to upper Keter, which is known as Keter Malchus. And this is drawing down and revealing the kingship of God in all the worlds. Malchus Daika, specifically She'ein Tzrik Mamshala, Ba'al Karcham, and it's not in a way of forcing, as we said earlier. A king doesn't force his will upon the people. Kivan Shemalchus Baratzoin, rather it has to be with one's will. You must willingly accept the king's kingship. Kiblu Aleim. Kabbalas all Malchus Shemaim. Kabbalah Pnei Mashiach Tzidkenu. We have to willingly accept Mashiach into our life. He's not going to force himself on us. We're waiting for Mashiach and he's waiting for us. It's crazy. Yubes. Bior Derech Yeshara. And now the Rebbe is going to end and give us the clear path. Now keep in mind, again, just to circle back to the beginning of the Sikha. In the beginning of the Sikha, we talked about that the Rebbe addressed everyone on Koach Nisan, the 20th of Nisan, a week before he gave the Sikha, and said, I've done all that I can do. Me, Mashiach, has done all he can do to bring Mashiach. Doesn't make sense. Now I'm handing the baton over to you. You must do all you can do to bring Mashiach in the way of Orat V'Tohu, the Kelim of Tikkun, which we've been talking about for the last hour and 45 minutes. And now the Rebbe is telling us, here's how you do it. Because it was mass panic. No one knew what to do when the Rebbe said those words. And the Rebbe came along and said, don't freak out. I'm going to tell you exactly how to bring Mashiach. Biora Derech Yeshar, and to explain what is the straight path. These gados of Bioisa Mashiach, in order to bring about and reveal Mashiach, is al yidei through Malchus Sheba Tiferet. It's Malchus and Tiferet. Malchus that is in Tiferet, to be specific. But Nogla Masa B'fal. In actuality, how do we do this? Bagdam. First of all, since that for sure Mashiach Tzidkenu is immediately going to stand up and take us out of the gulfs. But in reality, we're still in the final moments of the exile. We're not in Jerusalem in the Beit HaMikdash. And therefore, the Rusho Hishtadluis Ba'achrina. It's necessary that we do the final work that is incumbent upon us. She'll call Echad Ve'echad in Israel. For every single Jew, no one could say, well, whenever Mashiach he comes. That's not my problem. No, it is your problem. Every one of us, this is work is incumbent upon. The Havei Es Mashiach, to bring Mashiach, not to wait for Mashiach. Every one of us, it's incumbent upon us to bring Mashiach. And it must be done in actuality, the Rebbe says. How? Malchus Sheba Tiferet. From Malchus that is in Tiferet. In other words, the Rebbe says, Mashiach, the matters of Mashiach, which are Malchus, Kefishu Torah, must be brought down through the Torah, which is Tiferes. As we said above, Sha'aydeha Torah, that through the Torah, in Inisha Mashiach B'Torah, Rav, by learning the Torah of Mashiach as a Rav, as a Rebbe, as we said earlier, by learning his Torah of Mashiach, we're able to draw down these very high lights of redemption. Into the level of Penimi, because now we're learning his Torah. Pashtus, Tiferet, and more simply, this level of Tiferet, who I did limit Torah through learning Torah, of Malchus Sheba Tiferet. He leimed HaTorah be'inenei melech HaMashiach me'inei HaGeula she's ba'oira b'riboi mekoymes. And he emphasized that Malchus Sheba Tiferet is we have to learn Torah, which is Tiferet, about Mashiach, which is Malchus. And he said we have to learn all matters of Melech HaMashiach and matters of redemption is brought down and explained in many places. The Torah Shebekasuv, in the written Torah, Ubetorah Sheba'al Peh, and the oral Torah, Umidrashim, and the Midrashim, Umiuchad, and the Rebbe says, and specifically, and mainly, in the penimius of the Torah, the innermost dimension of the Torah, Hachal b'Sefer Hazar, talking about the Zohar, which talks about many places about Mashiach, Ubaprat, and specifically in the Torah of Chassidus, but Torah Rabbeinu Seinon Nasienu, referring to the teachings of our Rebbes, but Prat Parasoi, and specifically Ba'amrei Nakuti Torah Sichis shall Nasi Dorai. Be'inin Badugma Hakanana Lemei Torah Shamashiach. Torah Chadash Meitzi Teitzi. It's mind-boggling to me that the Rebbe told us here is the key to unlock redemption. And everyone just kind of left it hanging over there and said, well, we're going to do another halabake. Not locking halabakes, they're wonderful, but that's not the key to redemption. The Rebbe said, here's the key to redemption. You have to learn the Torah, connect it to Mashiach and Geula, in all the sources, and most specifically from Chassidus of the teachings of the Nasi Hador, who is the Rebbe, that's connected to the matters of Mashiach, which we're learning right now. And this will prepare us and teach us and give us a foretaste of the Mashiach, the Torah of Mashiach. Torah Chadash Mitzi Teitzi, the new Torah that will come out from me. Ladies, gentlemen, whoever is listening, who's ever joining us, we are doing exactly what the Rebbe said to do to bring Mashiach. Mashiach's going to reveal himself, and he's going to turn to every one of us and say, Yasher Koach, thank you. Because this is what I said to do. Whoever is learning these sichos on Nun Aleph Nun Beis every week is doing exactly what the Rebbe said to do to bring Mashiach. And the only reason I could possibly fathom as to why anyone, Lachas Kama Vakama, Labavacher, is not learning these sichos every week is because they're afraid that when you learn these sichos, you're going to become a raging Mashiachist and you're going to start screaming for Mashiach, and people don't want to go out of their comfort zone. They'd rather just chuckle along in the Golas and wait. But that's not what the Rebbe is telling us to do. He's telling us we must learn Torah of Mashiach from the leader of the generation, which we're doing every single week. The Dias Elokus, and this will bring us to the knowledge of God. Sakt in a Rambam, as the Rambam says. But Oisen Hazman, Yehi Yisrael, Hachamim, Nedoyim, Yodim, Hadavarim, Hestamim, and all the Jewish people will have tremendous knowledge of deep inner workings of the Torah when Mashiach comes. And in addition to the learning of Torah connected to matters of Mashiach and redemption, which is Malchus Shebetiferes, which is exactly what these sikhs are. These sikhs are a bridge. What of Israel's current geopolitical situation vis-a-vis Mashiach? Oh, so it's a very good question, and it requires a very long explanation beyond the scope of what we're learning. But this is all part of the final stages. Thank you. It says the out of opposition brings unity. The current political strife in Israel, this is all signs of redemption. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, spoke about what's called the birth pangs of Mashiach. That says when a woman, for us men who do not know about this, but when a woman is giving birth, the labor pains are the most painful right before the baby comes out. That's when the contractions get shorter and shorter and shorter, and that's when the throes of labor, because what's happening is new life is coming into the world. So the previous Rebbe said, right before this new energy of Mashiach, this new life comes into the world, there's going to be the point of the most darkness. And there's only one thing that can cut a diamond. You know what that is? It's a diamond. The only thing that can really harm a Jew is another Jew. So the number one way that the Sitra Achra, the Klippas, the forces of impurity can gain light is by causing us to fight amongst ourselves. So when the Jewish people are brainwashed through a manipulative media and a government that's connected to the Illuminati that has a bigger hidden agenda of controlling people, that force an extreme left and extreme right to cause hatred amongst one another instead of focusing on the real enemy outside, what happens is that energy causes tremendous negativity in the world, and all that energy gets sucked up and used for negative energy. So they're specifically targeting in Israel the far left and the far right and causing infighting amongst each other in order to bring energy into the world. But what's really happening on a deeper level is that energy, as we're learning now, of opposites, Hesed and Gevurah, up and down, whatever you want to call it, right and left, eventually that pressure is going to open up and the new life from Mashiach will come forth. So it's all part of this process. But it should end in a way of rachamim, of mercy, and should not continue in the way it's going in now. And that's why there's so many problems in Israel, by the way, because there's so much fighting amongst our own brothers that's causing din, that's causing strict judgment upon them. Hashem rachamim, Hashem should have mercy and bring Moshiach now. So in addition to the straight path of bringing Mashiach through learning Mashiach from the leader of the generation, which is the teachings of Mashiach connected right now, yes, and having a lot of Amunah, is a Derek Yashar, the straight path. The fall, he's got a base of Mashiach, we will have a fall mamish. The straight path, the Rebbe says, by learning Torah of Mashiach, specifically from the teachings of the leader of their generation, which we do every week, Monday at 8 o'clock. And I encourage you to ask a friend to join, to get as many people as you can to join, because this is how we bring Mashiach. Because we're taking this energy, we don't realize it, but when we're talking about these matters and bringing this energy into this world, it's taking these opposite polar realities and bringing unity. We're tapping into right now a light that's much higher than the opposition of left and right. And the more of that light we bring in, the more it will eventually enter into this energy and bring peace. Yud Gimel to finish off the last couple letters. And the Rebbe said, and for sure, you are going to publish everything that I just told you in as much places as possible, in order to bring about the true and full final redemption immediately. I'll call Echad Mechad Israel from every one of the Yidden, including those who dwell in working matters, Zebulun, men, women, and children, in every single one of us. The Rebbe said you should publicize every single place you can, that every one of us, it's incumbent upon us to add on and learning of Torah, especially connected to matters of Mashiach and Geulah. Once again, a plug, we're doing that every Monday night at 8 o'clock. And this is what will be good. Especially if we can make a group of 10 people to learn together. When you have a group of 10 people, the Shekhinah is amongst us when we learn Torah. And the Rebbe said, how much more so that the Shekhinah will dwell upon a group of 10 of us when we're learning matters of Mashiach and Geula. Because this will bring about simcha, an opening of the hearts. And this will bring about the desire, the Rebbe says, to bring Mashiach. That's one of the reasons we learn about Mashiach. It's very hard for someone to be connected to God without learning Torah. Because when you learn Torah, you start desiring God. You want to get closer to Him. It's the same thing. When you learn about Mashiach, you start getting excited about Mashiach. You want to bring Mashiach. It becomes part of your life. And furthermore, we must continue to increase in our mitzvot and our good deeds in the most remarkable way possible. Specifically to the mitzvah of giving tzedakah. That charity brings and hastens the redemption. With our name of Mashiach. And this is connected to adding on in tzedakah, with adding on in matters of learning Torah about Mashiach and redemption. The Rebbe says that when you give tzedakah, you should specifically have in your mind that this is, I'm giving the tzedakah in the merit to hasten the redemption. And the Rebbe said it's also tzedakah when we learn matters of Torah connected to Torah and Mashiach, because it's bringing redemption to the world. Dalet, final letter, may be God's will. That the good resolutions we take and everything connected to above. Will immediately bring forth and hasten the redemption. But Pashtu Shabbayom Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Isha Ki Tazreya V'Zorah, in this week's Parsha where we're connected Tazreya Mitzorah, and this is the Torah of the Mitzorah. Today, these galus, Mashiach Tzidkenu, it should bring forth the true revealing and the coming of our righteous Redeemer, Mashiach. Shehine Zeh Melech HaMashiach Bo, and we will all point our fingers and say, "Here's Mashiach." And here comes the leader of our generation. Hakol Rabbi Nisyan Azino. Here come all our Rebbes. Here call all the righteous amongst the Jewish people, and Moshe and Aaron are amongst them. V'yichadim kol bnei Yisrael, and together with all the Jewish people, and the reign of the Zekenu are young and are old. V'v'nei our sons and our daughters. Oid akavitza Allah, the kavitza will all travel together. Mishram Mitzrayim, and go out from Egypt, and splitting of the sea, and to our holy land, to Yerushalayim, our holy city, to the Beis Hamikdash, to the Kodesh Kadoshim. And together we will see as we're entering this parsha of Mincha. And Aaron, just like Aaron will enter into the Kodesh Kadoshim, Knesset Kohen Gadol, Yom Kippur, Kodesh Kadoshim. The Rebbe says in the future to come, not only the Kohen Gadol will enter into the Kodesh Kadoshim, but every one of the Jewish people will reach the level of a Kohen Gadol, meaning we'll all have the ability to get to the closest level of godliness. But and not only on Yom Kippur. Rather, whoever wants to enter can enter at any times. It all must come to actual deed. The matam asar tifachim, down here in this physical world. And this will bring about the true revealing of Mashiach. We will all bless him with the blessing of Shechianu. Have the fullest galus of Mashiach. And Hashem should bless every one of us to literally have the light of Mashiach permeate into every aspect of our lives and remove any oppositions, any challenges, any difficulties. And we should be dancing with Melech Mashiach in the Beis Hamikdash now. God bless you.